Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The Environment Secretary, Michael Gove, has promised to deliver a green Brexit, as he told environmental and countryside groups that leaving the European Union offers a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reform Britain's farming and fisheries policies. Mr Gove also said future farming subsidies must be earned rather than simply handed out. Our science editor, David Shookman, reports.
In a cloud of dust, the harvest begins this evening in Hertfordshire, a key moment in the farming calendar, along with another important event, the arrival of the annual EU subsidies. The payments are based on how much land the farmers own, so the richest benefit most, and the Environment Secretary wants Brexit to change that.
Leaving the EU gives us a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reform how we manage agriculture and fisheries, and therefore how we care for our land, our rivers and our seas. And we can recast our ambition for our country's environment and for the planet. In short, leaving the European Union should mean a green Brexit.
At the moment, EU farming subsidies are worth some £3 billion a year. That amounts to about 50% of the total of farmers' incomes. And because 70% of UK land is farmed, any change in policy will have a big impact. The idea proposed by Michael Gove is to link future payments to farmers to better care of the soil, the water and the wildlife. The one farmer, Robert Law, says he's worried the bureaucracy around this will just be too complicated.
How are we actually going to have the time to get out and do our core activity of farming and growing crops? You know, we're told we're going to receive probably less payments in the future. There's got to be a balance.
What Michael Gove is suggesting is pretty radical by any standards, shifting the emphasis of agricultural policy from food production to encouraging wildlife. But none of this is going to happen quickly. The government has promised that the current system of farm payments will continue until 2022. But some environmental changes may happen more quickly. Mr Gove promised a new law banning microbeads, tiny plastic particles used in facial scrubs and toothpaste that can end up polluting the oceans. He wants new moves to save stocks of fish. Mr Gove says the EU allows overfishing, and he believes Britain acting alone could be more sustainable. And he described climate change as a threat and criticised Donald Trump for pulling out of the Paris Agreement on global warming. Ultimately, any minister is judged by their actions, and although Mr Gove's pledges seem much greener than many expected, what counts is the hard detail on everything from what's grown in the fields to how farmers adjust after Brexit. David Shookman, BBC News in Hertfordshire.
Michael Gove also said the whole Cabinet is in agreement that there should be a period of adjustment after Brexit so that businesses have access to the migrant workers they need. Well, our Deputy Political Editor John Pienaar is at Westminster for us this evening. So, John, does this make the government's position over Brexit clearer?
Well, there's been a lot of squabbling in the Cabinet lately, but there is now more agreement over the shape of Brexit. Only some, though, and only for now. Brexit is still a work in progress. There's broad agreement now on the importance of keeping trade moving freely as now between Britain and Europe during a transitional period of maybe 2 years. The Chancellor and a lot of civil servants would like that period to be much longer. Business will need that time to adjust to a new customs system, and there's a worry that a sudden lurch into a new system could hit investment. In the end, it'll be up to those negotiations in Brussels, and the EU side are bound to try to attach strings on, for example, the role of the European Court in settling trade disputes. As far as freedom of movement of people is concerned, there has been no real discussion, not in Cabinet, not in Cabinet Committee. That still has to be worked out, and it's a political quagmire. It raises questions of EU citizens' rights and British citizens' rights. It could upset Brexiteer Tory MPs who don't want freedom of movement to go on for 1 minute longer than necessary. This is a political quagmire on the road to Brexit, which will have to be confronted. As David Davis, the Brexit Secretary, said just the other day, the clock's ticking. He's right about that. So much still to do, and now so little time.
John at Westminster, thank you.
Now, the Cabinet is united around a transition deal allowing continued free movement for EU citizens after Brexit. That's according to the Environment Secretary and prominent Brexiteer Michael Gove. He claimed the government would take a pragmatic approach after reports that a transition could last up to 4 years. Well, that hasn't impressed hardline Eurosceptics, while many businesses just want the government to provide some proper direction, as our business editor Siobhan Kennedy has been finding out.
What are we looking at? This is all decking.
No, it's not all decking.
Fine,
this, for example, is flooring, which we're specially developing for the Royal Academy.
Time is everything for the boss of this worldwide timber business. Herman Shea knows Brexit is coming, but says without a lengthy transition period after 2019 to adjust, his business will suffer.
Certainly a transition period, at least 2 years, I think, would be a good thing. Nobody likes shocks. When I talk about shocks, I would rather not find out when they finalise the Brexit negotiations and then have a very short time to organise things.
So you think there's absolutely no chance whatsoever that they can do everything in the next 2-year period so that when we reach March 2019, we immediately flip to this new world?
Well, even if they do everything, we'll only find out, and then we've got no time to adjust.
Today, even Michael Gove, a leading Brexiteer, indicated that message from business was finally getting through. Speaking at an environment conference, he said the cabinet was now united around the need for a transitional deal to help companies avoid a cliff edge.
As we leave the European Union, we will have an implementation period which will ensure that we can continue to have not just access to labour, but the economic stability and certainty which business requests.
So what could a transitional deal look like? The period could last 2 to 4 years or longer after 2019. The UK would get access to some form of single market and the customs union, but in return would have to agree to maintain freedom of movement of people, continue its EU budget contributions, and possibly still be bound by European Court of Justice rulings. Cabinet members are clearly keen to portray some form of consensus around implementation, but it's too late for some. Bank of America here becoming the 4th big investment bank this week to say it plans to shift its European headquarters outside London post-Brexit. In the absence of a concrete plan and decision on implementation, these banks say they simply can't afford to wait. As for Mr. Shea, he too says he can't just sit still. He's now making plans for an office or 2 in Europe, a need to keep business flowing when today's rules no longer apply.
Siobhan Kennedy reporting there.